Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, the first round of FanDuel Win Total over-unders are out for next season. I'll tell you why the Timberwolves are too low, also where they rank compared to everybody else in the NBA across the landscape of contenders where the Wolves sit. We'll also do what to watch for in Vegas. Part 2 is the Wolves kickoff in Las Vegas Summer League today. It's all coming. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Today's episode is brought to us by our friends at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Happy Thursday, everybody. Happy first day of the Las Vegas Summer League for the Timberwolves. They play this afternoon. We'll talk about that a little bit later. I do want to give you kind of a what to watch for part 2 as kind of a primer for today's first game of Vegas. They play again on Saturday as well. So a big few days ahead for the Wolves Vegas entry. But I want to start today with the Las Vegas, Vegas, but FanDuel's over-under win totals and why the Wolves are too low. I want to compare their number to everybody else in the league, compare them to where they were at this time last year and at the start of the season from a win total perspective, and why I think the number's too low. I do. So we'll get into all that here on the show today. Big thank you off the top for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. All right. Let's start with FanDuel win totals. This is one of my favorite times of year or favorite, I guess, shows, favorite moments of the year when this is released. And obviously this is preliminary. The offseason is not even over. We talked about this earlier this week. 2 weeks ago, the finals were still happening, I think. I guess 2 weeks ago was the draft. So 2.5 weeks ago, the finals were still happening. We're only 2.5 weeks away from Game 7 of the finals, and already we're doing win totals for next year because so much happened with the draft and the start of free agency and some trades, et cetera. And, of course, these numbers will shift a little between now and mid-October. But remember last year, in the wake of the Karl-Anthony Towns Julius Randle trade, I don't think the Wolves number changed at all. I think it stayed exactly the same. I think the Knicks went up slightly, and Minnesota stayed the same. Minnesota this season, I don't want to bury the lead here. The Timberwolves FanDuel win total for this year is 50.5 wins. Now, remember, FanDuel win totals are usually fairly conservative because a lot has to go right for teams to actually hit the over no matter what, right? Like most of the time, you only have, 3 to 5 teams or whatever winning 50-plus games, and that's basically reflected in the win totals. And I'll get into what some of the other teams are. For context, last season, Minnesota opened at and finished the offseason at 52.5 wins for their win total. Year before, they had won 56 regular season games. Last year, they came into the season with a win total of 52.5. I took the slight over preseason. I thought they would be in the 53, 54 range. I did think they would win less than 56 games. I didn't think they'd be quite to the level they were the year prior. I was right about that, but they did end up only winning 49 regular season games. I didn't count on them kicking away so many games against bad teams. And also I didn't necessarily think that the Julius Randle thing wouldn't be a little rocky to start, but it was more just the silly games they lost. Remember that they were outperforming or underperforming, I should say, their Pythagorean win-loss, their point differential for much of the season, until it kind of caught up there toward the end, and it ended up a little closer to where it should have been. So what gets me a little bit off the bat, without even comparing it to any of the other teams, is the Wolves already 2 wins lower than where they were last year. And maybe the real answer is they're 1 game worse without Nickeil Alexander-Walker, because that's the only real difference right now is Alexander-Walker is gone. And then maybe Vegas is overcorrecting or is correcting for going too high last season. Remember, the Wolves won 49 games. Their number was 52.5. So maybe there's some correction here for Vegas. Like, all right, we overshot it a little last year. Plus, they lost Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Is Nickeil worth a full win over the course of the season? I don't know. He's a really good player, but is the idea of Rob Dillingham and Terrence Shannon Jr. worth 1 to 2 games? I mean, I think worst case scenario, sure. But I guess maybe that's the position here is it's fair to expect the worst case scenario from two guys who have never regularly played rotation minutes in the NBA, two guys who I mean, TJ's 24, like he's an older second year guy. Dylan Him's 20, 21. But again, that's the only rotation change. 7 of the top 8 are the same. There's actually less change now than there was last year. I mean, the only difference is Alexander Walker's gone and his role will be filled at the moment. I've said this a million times. It'll be replaced in the aggregate by Rob Dillingham, TJ Shannon, perhaps Jalen Clark. That's kind of what that 8th man role looks like, but nothing else has changed. And that's only a game and a half better than where they finished last year at 49 wins, which surprises me a little. Again, like I guess the counterpoint or the argument for the Vegas line would be, for the FanDuel line, would be, hey, it's the same team. Rudy Gobert's a year older. Mike Conley's a year older. And they didn't get better. So why would they organically improve or improve because of internal improvement? Well, I would argue Ant's going to get better. Like we saw him improve again last year. It might be time for a little bit of a bigger leap this year. This is like, will actually be year 2 of him being like completely loaded up on. Remember, we talked about this going into the playoffs last year, that the amount of times that teams blitzed Ant in the pick and roll was dramatically more than just the year before. The first year the Wolves went to the conference finals and lost to Dallas. To this last season that just finished, he was blitzed dramatically more. 2 on the ball all the time. He's going to be better at that this year. You assume that, Dante DiVincenzo struggled for a decent portion of the year. So he's probably going to get better. Jaden McDaniels probably improves. You expect probably the same from Naz Reid. And yeah, Mike Conley might get a little worse, but his role started to be, pared back just a little toward the end of the year. So yeah, if you're going to take the over, you're going to bet on Rob Dillingham and TJ Shannon doing something positive this year. And I'm not saying I am taking the over. My immediate I'll tell you what my immediate reaction is. My immediate reaction is to take the over, even in the rough and tumble West. We'll talk more about the West here in a second. And last year I took the over on 52.5, slight over, and I was wrong. 2 years ago, I took the over on, 49.5 or something 2 years ago, and I was right. But I thought they'd win 55, 56. They ended up winning 57 games that year. Or sorry, I thought they'd win 54, 55. They ended up winning 56 2 years ago. So I undershot them a little bit 2 years ago, but was right on the over-under, and I overshot them and was wrong on the over-under last year. My immediate reaction right now, this team right now against the West is currently constructed when I see this, is to take a slight over again. I think this is a 52 to 53-ish win team. I think that they will be better than last year. I thought last year they were better than their record. And now, and by the way, I talked about the Ant improvement, the Jaden improvement. But the other thing is, this is year 2 of Julius Randle playing with Ant and playing the front court with Rudy Gobert. Remember what we said 2 years ago? After year 1 with Rudy, when they got the 8th seed, they were in the play-in, they got the 8th seed, they lose to Denver. They were worse than the year before they acquired Rudy. And everyone's, some people are like, oh, they got Rudy and they got worse. And a lot of us said, hey, wait a minute. Wait till year 2 when Rudy and Ant are more familiar with each other. Rudy's healthy, not coming off a Eurobasket. And what happened? They won 56 games. They went to the conference finals. This will now be year 2 of Julius Randle. Year 2 of Julius Randle playing with Rudy Gobert in the front court, and year 2 of Julius Randle playing with Naz Reid in the front court, and year 2 of Julius Randle sharing an offense with Anthony Edwards. And we saw the offense get progressively better throughout the year. It was a top 10 unit over the final few months of the season. Full stop. So I would argue this team improves next year. It might be slightly. They might go from 49 to 52 wins or 51 wins or whatever. But I would take the slight over on 50.5 right now. I reserve the right to change this before the start of the season. I traditionally do my over-under like the day before, the day of the opening regular season game, because I want to see how everything plays out in the offseason and all that stuff. But right now, my immediate reaction is a slight over on 50.5 for Minnesota. I want to talk about some of the other win totals and give some context to where the Wolves are. And then we'll spend the rest of the show, basically the last segment and a half, talking about Summer League, what to watch for here as the Wolves kick off in Vegas today. It's all upcoming here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. When I first started using Monarch, there was a specific thing that stuck out to me that I spent too much money on, and maybe you're the same way. It was takeout/food delivery. It's sometimes it's both, but the delivery thing really got me. Maybe for you, it's subscriptions. That's one that a lot of people sneaks up on them. You don't realize like, hey, I'm not using this random subscription, or I have 14 streaming apps and I only need 12 streaming apps or whatever it might be. It adds up to more than you'd expect. And also having everything together in one app like Monarch Money will make it easier to manage your money day to day. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. All right, some more win totals that stuck out. I should say Minnesota's 50.5. Where does that rank across the NBA? I'm glad you asked. Across the NBA, that's sixth. There are only 3 Western Conference teams ahead of Minnesota, and I bet you could guess who they are. In order, OKC, 62.5, which is just a bonkers win total. Bonkers. I mean, last year, Boston coming off the title was 58.5 coming into the season. OKC's this year is 62.5. Number 2 in the West is Houston at 54.5. Surprised me a little. And Denver at 53.5. Minnesota, a relatively distant 4th at 50.5. Incidentally, the Lakers are at 48.5 and the Clippers are 47.5. And I feel like there was another team that was hovering around 49, and I'm forgetting who that was in the West. Let's see if I can find it real quick. I could be wrong. I could be crazy. It's not. Yeah, no, I'm crazy. There's nobody that's hovering there. I mean, San Antonio is 43.5. I thought there was a chance. Memphis is 40.5. Golden State is 46.5. So it really is kind of that gap. Dallas is 40.5. So so it's those 2. It's OKC, it's Houston, or those 3, and then Denver. A 3-win gap to Minnesota at 50.5, and then a 2 gap to the Lakers at 40.5 and the Clippers at 47.5. I don't really have a problem with that. Let me give you the other 2 in the East. The 2 in the East that are better than Minnesota are the Cavaliers at 56.5 and the Knicks at 52.5. Now, Boston, of course, with the Tatum injury, they slid all the way down to 43.5, which actually is a little lower than I expected still without Tatum. And then the Pacers with the Tyrese Halliburton injury are at 38.5. Still a little bit lower than I would have expected there too, although that one's a little bit more understandable in my opinion. So I actually don't mind this. I don't mind. Oh, the Knicks. Yeah, I said the Knicks are 52.5. So 2 wins ahead of Minnesota. Minnesota being 6th in the NBA makes sense to me. I buy that. I also buy OKC, Houston, and Denver being ahead of Minnesota. I'm fine with that. My gripe isn't necessarily that the Wolves are 6th, they're 4th in the West. It's just that they're 50.5. I think they should be in the 51 to 52.5 range. I'm okay with you. You look at the overall landscape of the West, Houston's obviously better. That's the obvious one. And they were the 2 seed last year. So they were really good in the regular season. And I do think they're better built for the regular season than the playoffs still, even now. But considering them to be 4 wins better than Minnesota, I think is a little aggressive. I mean, I don't know. We talked about this on yesterday's show. Is Kevin Durant still a top 10 player? The Nuggets, Thunder, and Timberwolves all have top 10 players. Kevin Durant is very likely not a top 10 player. You could argue he's 12 to 15. You can make that argument. And what's the big difference between Ant is better than Durant at this stage, and I don't think it's all that close as a two-way player. So I wonder a little bit about the Houston thing. And at some point, I'm sure Jackson from Locked On Houston and I will talk about this at a bit greater length. Denver at 53.5, I'm okay with. I think they're better. I think the bench is clearly better. We'll see what happens with Jonas Valanciunas, but surrounding Jokic, certainly one of the best 2 players in the world with a better bench and better players overall matters. I wonder a bit, remember rookie head coach. I think David Adelman's going to do a really good job, but still rookie head coach. I don't know. I don't necessarily think the West is dramatically better. I mean, you look around and you say, okay, those catastrophic injuries I just mentioned are in the East. You include the Lillard one in the Bucks. So the East is just decimated. In the West, you have the Clippers doing Clipper stuff, and the Lakers with they'll have a bad defense, nothing really around Luka, LeBron, and Austin Reeves. So I know they signed DeAndre Ayton, great for them. I don't necessarily think the West is obviously still much better than the East, but I don't think it's dramatically better. Again, I get back to what I was saying about Minnesota in the first segment. I don't think that they're going to be worse than last year, and I guess the win total is slightly better, but I think this is I won't say an easy 50-win team. It's never easy to win 50 wins, but I would struggle to take the under on 50.5 for Minnesota right now, given all that information. All right, let's transition into talking a little bit about Summer League. And of course, we'll get back to win totals later in the offseason. We'll do final predictions. That comes in September, October, but the day it comes out is always a lot of fun. Summer League, what to watch for. If you missed it, just a real quick aside, last Friday, so 4 shows ago, I did a full roster rundown of everybody on the Summer League roster for Minnesota. So the actual roster guys for the Timberwolves, first, second year guys, the two-way player guys, the Iowa Wolves players that are on the roster, and then undrafted players and other pros on the team. So I did that whole rundown last Friday. And then I spent some time on yesterday's show, Wednesday's show, the second piece of the show, second part of the show. I did a what to watch for in Summer League. And I started with the four roster guys who were on the team last year for Minnesota. So Jalen Clark, Rob Dillingham, Leonard Miller, TJ Shannon. So I talked about Rob Dillingham's decision-making. Can he run the offense? I'm more worried about that than his defense or his shot making. The actual shooting we'll see what happens in Vegas. It's a very small, painfully small sample to take anything away statistically, right? It's more about the feel, the decision-making for Dillingham. Again, the defense, I think the effort was there last year. It's more about, can he run the offense? He had the highest turnover rate on the Wolves last year. His usage rate was only behind Anthony Randle. He had the ball in his hands a lot when he was on the floor. Can he make good decisions when he's the focal point of the Summer League team? One of the other things I talked about yesterday was Terrence Shannon Jr. in the half court with the ball in his hands and on-ball defense, consistency playing on-ball defense. I want to see Jalen Clark shooting. Again, small sample, yes, but he shot 43% on low volume last year as an NBA player, which was unexpected given how he shot the ball at UCLA. Can he continue that hot shooting in Summer League? What is the comfort level, his confidence level with his stroke? And then also Leonard Miller. Can he prove to be a rotation guy? Again, can you prove that in Summer League? Not really, but you can make a step in the right direction. You can show defensive intensity. You can be active on the glass. Those are the things I'm looking for from Leonard Miller. So I want to give you 4 more things. I got 4. 4-ish, 3.5 more things today about not guys who were on the Timberwolves last year. So the first one I want to talk about is, and this is really in no particular order, let's continue, I guess, the theme with somebody who was at least in a Wolves uniform at times last year, or at least on the Wolves bench, Jesse Edwards. Jesse Edwards is the 25-year-old big man who played 5 years in college, split between Syracuse and West Virginia. He is 7'1", and the archetype of Rudy Gobert, right? Offensively, he's a roll big. He's active on the offensive glass, or at least he should be, and he's a shot blocker. We need to get a feel for, is he a viable 4th or even a 5th big at the NBA level? I mean, Minnesota, even when they were desperate last year, played Luka Garza 10, 12, 14 minutes in some of these games where Rudy was out, Randle and or Nas was out, and Jesse Edwards didn't see a minute of non-garbage time playing time as a two-way guy last season. But yet, at the moment, they're at least planning to bring him back. Can he show in Summer League's its own beast in terms of pace of play, turnovers all over the place? You get this weird combination of guys who are just athletic and G League guys that are trying to make it into the league, and you get these kind of 4-year college guys that are the opposite, right? That are these kind of they're here because they know how to play, and teams want these glue guys. And so you get this weird kind of mix of players, and the ball's flying all over the place. And can Jesse Edwards fit in a good way? What's the mobility look like in pick and roll defense? What's his motor, especially on the glass? Is he playing hard? Can you hang your hat on a skill and a half or 2 skills that you're like, okay, Jesse Edwards could be a 4th big at the NBA level? Because if not, I don't know, other than having a body in practice that can replicate stuff that Rudy and other bigs can do, I don't know what the point is if they're not going to trust him to the level of playing the quote-unquote Luka Garza role. He's a very different player than Luka Garza, but to play that role as a deep backup big, that's a real question. And I don't know that we'll get a full answer here at Summer League. Again, this is at max 6 games, I think, a 5 to 6 game sample. But What's the field look like? Has he improved since last year? He was very stiff last year in Summer League. And in the brief moments he played, I guess with the Iowa Wolves too, I would describe him as stiff, not super mobile. Like, what's that look like now? And can he hold his own as a deep bench big at the NBA level? I think that's an important question for him to try and answer. I've got 2.5 more things that I want to cover about non-roster guys, names to know, and what to watch for 3 players. We'll just say it that way. There's 3 guys that have specific skills that I want you to watch for here as we get into Las Vegas Summer League. We'll do that here next to close the show. All right. Couple more things. I think there's 2 players to watch out for that might have a shot at pushing for a 2-way spot. Probably not an actual roster spot, but could they then push somebody? Like, I don't think Jesse Edwards is getting a roster spot, but if he plays really well and like one of these other 2 guys plays really well, could one of them grab a 2-way spot? Or Minnesota, as of right now, rookie, by the way, I should mention that Rocco Zakarski, second-round pick out of Australia, did officially sign his 2-way deal. The trade was announced the other day. The 2-way deal was announced, I should say, on Wednesday. So it's Zakarski and it's Jesse Edwards on 2-way deals. They have one open. They reportedly had extended the qualifying offer to restricted 2-way free agent Tristan Newton, who is on this roster. So he's obviously someone to look out for. It's easy to rescind that. It's easy to waive a guy who's on a 2-way. So there's some stuff that can happen there. So I say all this. Could one of these guys I'm about to mention beat out Tristan Newton for the 3rd 2-way spot? Could somebody else get elevated to a standard contract, a Tristan Newton, a Jesse Edwards, or maybe even one of these guys? Or might they waive somebody like a Tristan Newton, or I guess in this case, a Jesse Edwards or whatever, to let one of these guys onto the roster? The 2 guys I want to talk about are Amari Bailey and Jamal Kane. Amari Bailey is the tough, kind of a little bit undersized, hard-nosed guard out of UCLA. He's somebody who is kind of like a borderline draft pick type guy anyway, and played with Jalen Clark again at UCLA. He's only 6'4" with a 6'7" wingspan. He's not really a natural point guard. He's more of a natural shooting guard, but the shooting is a little bit spotty. So what does he do well? Well, again, he's tough. He's got a good first step. Really good footwork, really physical, great around the rim, can score in the paint, can get past guys and score. But again, at 6'4" with a 6'7" wingspan, unless you're a lights-out shooter or a really good playmaker, it's tough to make a living if you're not really good at least one of those 2 things. And he had moments as a shooter, maybe less so as a passer and a playmaker. But given the modest size, he's not a good enough passer to be a point guard. He's not a good enough shooter to be a full-time shooting guard. But he does all these other things really well, and kind of has a nose for scoring. So there's some value into having, and by the way, he was a 2nd-round pick. I said he was talked about as a possible 1st-round pick a couple years ago. 2nd-round pick by Charlotte, has, bounced around here the last year or so. And I think he ends up with the Iowa Wolves if the Wolves don't end up keeping him. He played with the Iowa Wolves last year, so that could be where he ends back up. But I think there's an opportunity for him to show like, hey, I've improved the shooting skill, or I've learned how to be a little bit of a better passer. There is actually some similarity there to Jalen Clark, although I think he's not as good defensively, obviously, but I think he's more developed offensively. Did I say off? I meant to say he's not as good defensively. I think I did say that, as Jalen Clark, but he's not tougher. He's better overall, more well-rounded offensively than Jalen Clark. There are actually some similarities there. They already have Jalen Clark. They don't also need Amari Bailey, but he's a name to look out for. I think he's going to do well in Summer League. I think he's going to score a little bit and maybe stand out. I could see him. This is a bit of a prediction, I guess. I could see Amari Bailey, if he gets the minutes, leading this team in scoring. And I don't know, the rotation is always like weird. Like maybe Dillingham plays the first 2 games and doesn't play in game 3 or whatever. Depending on how the timing or how the minutes get split up, I could see Amari Bailey having a pretty big scoring role. The other guy I mentioned as pushing potentially for a roster spot or a 2-way spot would be Jamal Kane. Jamal Kane has seen NBA time with Miami and New Orleans, I believe. He's the one who's a bit of a jack of all trades. He's got good size. He's a wing forward type guy, a good athlete, can shoot the ball a little bit as well. Nothing really stands out as incredible. He's 6'7.5" with a wingspan of a little over 6'9", 6'9.5". Everything he does basically is good. I would say the defense is maybe a shade below where you want it to be as like a quote unquote average defender, but nothing is really great other than his length and his size. Can handle the ball a little bit, can shoot a little bit, can score a little bit, rebounds actually really well for his position and size. Again, okay defensively. He's just not great at anything. But given the size and the fact that he can do everything a little bit, could there be an NBA role for him? I think of like, he's not this player, but a guy who I remember that was like this is Otheus Jeffers. Remember him? Bounced around with the Spurs, a little bit with the Wolves back in the Tibbs days, or was it Adelman days? I don't know. It was a while back. I thought he had a shot, like, and he did play in the NBA, obviously. I guess so was Jamal Kane. That type of a player where, like, jack of all trade, master of none, there's value to having that guy as a depth piece, especially look at a Wolves roster that with no Nikhil and everybody getting bumped up a rung, you look at this depth chart and it could get a little hairy there on the wing, depending on your thoughts on aging Joe Ingles and, how the rest of this thing all breaks out. He's somebody who could at least give you professional minutes. And so the Wolves have not stashed a guy that way on a two-way the last couple of years because they don't need to. They're a contending team that the roster 1 through 15 should be good enough. You don't need to rely on a two-way guy. But if they decide to go that route with somebody who's relatively young, I think Jamal Kane would be a worthy possibility there. So younger guy who has stuff to develop and is a good defender and a good scorer and, tough-nosed scorer in Amari Bailey, or jack of all trades, master of none, a little bit more experience than Jamal Kane. I like both those guys. Keep an eye on both of them. Last one would be Babakar Sane. He's only 21. He's been playing professionally for basically 4 years. I think he'll stick with the Iowa Wolves. I'm just curious if he gets run, and I want to see him play. I don't think he's got a real shot at making like a two-way or anything like that. He's got raw talent, length, athleticism, really a good defender, just needs more reps overall. 6'8" with a wingspan that's over 7'2", great athlete. Again, really good defense. There's not a whole lot of offense. He's not doing anything off the dribble. He's not really shooting the basketball well. But I think he's an intriguing prospect still that Minnesota obviously feels the same way, considering that they brought him to the Iowa Wolves last year. He's played with the G League Elite. He's from Senegal originally and bounced around a bit in the G League here stateside. But I think there's a lot to like there about Babakar Sane. It feels like he's the sort of guy who they wanted to see him in camp, summer league camp throughout the week, and maybe he doesn't get a whole lot of run in Vegas. This is, by the way, a rare year for Minnesota. There's actually several guys to watch, like legit roster guys. We've rattled them all off, but the draft picks from the last 2 years, and then the two-way guys, like it's like 8. Like basically the rotation is going to be guys that will be in Wolves uniforms on their bench, at least maybe in street clothes, but on the bench for the Wolves in the fall. And it's been a little while since we've seen that. I mean, last year, Dillingham and TJ Shannon, sure, but usually it's like, second round guys a year or two later, like what do they work on this summer? And these are all dudes that like Rob Dillingham and TJ Shannon are fighting for rotation spots this year. And obviously there's a lot of intrigue with Jean Beranger and Rocco Zakarski, the 2 draft picks for this year. So there's so much to watch. They play this afternoon at 1:30. And I'm going to do the regular show here on Friday, and 1:30, 2:30 this afternoon Central Time on ESPN2. And I will have the regular Friday show. We'll do basically a post-game pod like I do during the season to talk about Wolves Pelicans game 1 of Summer League. And then they play again Saturday night. I will have a show for you. It'll probably post Sunday evening, maybe first thing Monday. We're going to talk to our guy, Andrew Dukowitz, over at Zone Coverage and the Daily Wolves. He's going to be on site in Vegas, so we'll talk to him after the first 2 games. So it'll be a bit of a post-game pod from Sunday, but also kind of like a what happened over the weekend for Monday's show, and then we'll get you ready on Tuesday what to watch for the next game. So they get Sunday and Monday off before Tuesday afternoon they play Detroit. So a lot to unpack here. So you get me Friday with the post-game pod, myself and Andrew on Monday. As we enjoy some Las Vegas Summer League basketball here together. A reminder, the show is still daily every day of the week, Monday through Friday throughout the month of July. Big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. A reminder that for your second listen, you can find the Locked On NBA podcast where there is no offseason. Doug, Matt, and Hayes keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Of course, the Locked On Wolves podcast is also part of that very same Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.